Atra gacchantu devata Sadhammang munirajasansa Sunantu sagga mokkadang Dhamma savana kalo ayang badhanta Dhamma savana kalo ayang badhanta Dhamma savana kalo ayang badhanta. Let us also take a moment to remind ourselves that although today our lives have changed beyond recognition, beyond imagination, as you will know, we are not the same people who we used to be. Now, having used the gift of Dhamma, our lives have changed for the better. However, in this infinitely long journey in samsara, we have not had the privilege of associating the Dhamma. In fact, our associations have almost always been with ignoble people, immoral people. And these ignoble and immoral associations defiled our minds with raga, dvesha, moha, desire, aversion and delusion. Having been blinded with avidya and tanha, attachment and ignorance, we may have offended, insulted, abused the Aryas, the noble ones, the Samma Sambuddhas, the Pacceka Buddhas, Arahata Buddhas, Anagami, Sakurdagami, Sotapannas, be they on the path or having attained the fruits. For any words of abuse, any actions or even a thought of abuse that we might have directed towards them, either knowingly or unknowingly, such misdeeds may today block our path in the Dhamma, they may hinder our progress in the Dhamma. So, prior to us commencing, let us take a moment to genuinely and honestly to ourselves seek forgiveness from all those Aryas, as well as the Buddha's ministry, the Sambuddha Shasana, for any words or thoughts or actions of abuse, slander, that we may have directed towards them. And finally, let us all make a firm resolve that if there are any barriers to our understanding of the Dhamma, if there are any gaps in my knowledge, to my understanding of the Dhamma, to my comprehension of the Dhamma, may through the course of this sermon I be able to fulfill those gaps. May I, through the course of this sermon, as well as everyone else who are joined here today, either in visible form or in invisible form, be able to comprehend this Dhamma and redeem ourselves from the shackles of samsara, from the 4 great hells, once and for all. And with that firm resolve in mind, I invite you all to be prepared to prepare yourselves to listen to this sermon. Okay. All of us, each and every one of us, we go shopping. We want to get ourselves an item of clothing. Let's say it's a t-shirt. So we're all going shopping to get what? To buy a t-shirt. Now we're just interested in a plain t-shirt. We're not interested in any designs, any embroidery, nothing like that. We just want a plain t-shirt. Monocolor, whatever that color might be, we just want a t-shirt. Now, obviously we have to go to a shop that sells t-shirts. That's out of the question. So we do that. We go to a shop that sells t-shirts. Now, Buddha, what's your favorite color? Red. That was my favorite color too. What's the color that you like the least? Pink. Okay. I'm not going to ask you why. So, couple of obvious answers, but that's great because I think I share some of that sentiments. So we've got a favorite color, and that is, what's the favorite color? Red. And what's the color that we detest? The color that we just absolutely don't want to get a t-shirt in? Pink. Okay? So in fact, I would hazard a guess that if you were to go to his house, or at least his bedroom, there'd be lots of things in red. But I doubt there'd be anything in pink. Chances are there's not going to be much that we can find that's in pink, but most of it is probably going to be in red. So anyway, we go shopping and we are interested in buying ourselves a t-shirt, and we walk into the store, and then we are meted and greeted by a salesperson. So this salesperson greets us, "Welcome, sir, madam, thank you for visiting us. How is it that I may help you today?" And then, of course, we express our requirement. What I would like to buy today is a t-shirt. Do you have t-shirts? Do you sell t-shirts? Oh, of course we do, sir. Just a moment and I'll be right back. So this shop assistant turns around and turns his or her back on us, and then they're off to the stores to grab a t-shirt. Now, just as they're about to leave us, we say, "Oh, excuse me, I forgot to mention. Can you please get me a shirt in what color?" Red. Because that is my favorite color. "Could you please get me a t-shirt in red?" And then he or she says, "Absolutely, sir. I'll just be a moment. I'll just be a flash." And so she goes into the stock room. So she or he or she is, I'm just going to say she, okay, just for argument's sake. So she goes in and spends a minute and a half or so, and then she comes back into the main shop area, and then she says, "I'm really sorry to inform you, sir. We've actually run out of red t-shirts." Ah, that's a shame. I really do want to buy a t-shirt though. "Well, don't you worry, sir. We do have some other colors, and I'm going to go and get you one of those. Is that okay?" And then what do we say? "Actually, you know what? That's all right. Why don't you go and get me another color?" And then she turns her back on us, and then she's about to leave again. At that moment, you go, "Oh, excuse me. That's great, but please do not get me what? Pink. Please do not get me a pink t-shirt." So she's off again. She goes back into the stockroom. She spends another minute and a half or so, and then she comes back out. Now this time round, she's got a bag in her hand. You can see that she's got a bag in her hand. Let's say that's the kind of bag that they give you the products and that they sell in the store. Now, the nature of this bag, though, is that it's not transparent. It's opaque, so you can't see through the bag. So you don't know what's in the bag, okay? However, let's say that we fully trust this salesperson. We have absolute faith in them. So we have absolute faith now. If we trust this person 100%, we have absolute trust and faith, and we believe now that, are there red t-shirts in this shop? No, because we trust this person. We can't see the color of the t-shirt that's in the bag. In fact, we don't even know what's in the bag because we can't see through it. But if she comes over to us and say, "Here you go, sir." Now, you can't see inside the bag, okay? That's a caveat, by the way. You can't look into the bag. If we trust her and she has now just said, "Here you go, sir," and you've asked for a t-shirt, what do we know is in the bag? A t-shirt, absolutely. What do we also know if we trust her 100%? What color is it not? Pink. Well done. Simple, right? Pretty simple. Now here's a question. If we are entirely convinced that this is not a red t-shirt, if we are also entirely convinced that this is not a pink t-shirt, and if red is my most favorite color, and pink is the color I absolutely detest, I will not take anything home that is pink, but any other color, anything goes. I don't care. Whatever the other color is. I just don't like pink. I love my reds, but if it's not a red, and you can guarantee that it's not a pink, well, frankly, I don't care what color it is after all. At all, really. I really don't care. Now, here's a question for you. if you trust this person, absolutely, and given the fact that this bag is opaque, so you can't see what color this t-shirt is, but you know that it is a t-shirt, if you really don't care what color the t-shirt is, as long as it's not red and it's not pink, the question I have for you, ladies and gentlemen, is, would you need to check what color this t-shirt is? Would you? No, absolutely not. Why? Because you know it's not a red t-shirt. So, tough, wrong day, you've gone shopping. And you know it's not a pink t-shirt, because if it were pink, you wouldn't be walking home with it, no matter what the circumstances would be. But if it's any other color, I don't care, whatever, right? So you would be quite happy to walk home, and also given that it fits you perfectly, right? You don't need to try it out. Okay, you know that you bought t-shirts from that shop previously, only last week, so you haven't changed in size either. So as long as you've ordered the right size, and you know what design it is, provided that you're convinced that it's not red, tough luck. It's not pink, great. It's okay, whatever color that t-shirt is. Agree or not? So you'd happily walk home with that bag in your hand, not knowing what color that t-shirt is. Yes? Okay. Example 1. Example 2. You take this bag, and now it's in your hand, and now you're walking home. Home's not that far from the shop, so you're taking a bit of a stroll, and it's a nice afternoon, so you're taking a walk home. Now, as it happens, you also love flowers. You love flowers. Whatever the flower is, you just love flowers. But although you love flowers, you don't like, let's say you don't like feces. I think it's fair to say that most people don't like that. Dog poo. Okay? You don't like poo. Not Pooh Bear. You just don't like poo. Okay? So you love flowers, but you just don't like poo. Now, you're walking along the road, and as I'm sure you'll have experience of this, you see flowers on the road, you also see poo on the road. Although you don't like it, it's there. Because is the world to my liking? No, the world's not to my liking. Now, as you walk along the road and you spot flowers, now are you walking on this road to spot flowers? No, why are you walking on this road? To get home, right? You're trying to get home. But if you spot flowers, and because you absolutely love flowers, aren't you going to take a pause, take a moment to observe these flowers? Because you love them. You're going to turn your head. Look at these flowers. Ah, lovely flowers. And then you continue walking. But as you continue walking, you also see a pile of dog poo that's on the side of the road. Aren't you going to take a moment to look at the dog poo? Are you or are you not? Are you sure? Let me put it to you this way. Let's say there's a friend that you have a friend, a chap that you really like to get along, you really get along with, you like to spend time with. You're off on the street doing your shopping, whatever, and you see this guy from afar. Now, it's a busy day, there's lots of people around. Do you not keep your glance at that person so you can go and have a word with him, just in case you miss this guy, in the midst of the crowd? So you're going to focus your attention, you're going to make sure that you can see this guy from wherever you are, right? So you're going to look through the shoulders, right? Look from, you're just going to keep making sure that he's always in your line of sight. What if there's a guy that you really don't like? Someone you really don't like to meet? Again, aren't you going to check where that person is? To do what this time round? To avoid. To avoid, right? So likewise, if you see a pile of dog poo on the road, aren't you going to check where it is, make sure that you can avoid it, so that you don't walk too close to it, so that you don't have to take in the sense impressions through your 5 senses? You don't like to see it, you don't like to smell it, you don't like to touch it, you don't like any of that, let alone taste it. Okay? So you're going to try and avoid this as much as you possibly can. For that purpose, you're going to have to look at it. That's example 2. Now, also on this road, there are lots of other things like stones and rocks. There's grass. There are children running around. there are people, there are cars parked along the road. These things, you neither like nor dislike. Whatever. Yeah, I don't care that there are stones on the road. I don't care that there are little insects on the road. Ants. I don't care that they are there. I don't care that there are people or there are cars parked along the road. I really don't care. Because you really don't care, you don't stop, check, take a glance, car, hey, car. Another car, hey, car. You don't stop to observe them as such. You see them, but you don't go to look. Seeing and looking are entirely two different things. You see them, but you don't go to look. But the flowers, you see them or you look at them? You look at them. What about the pile of dog poo? You see it or you look at it? See or look? Look. Why? To avoid. Let's go back into the store where we went in to buy our t-shirts. You love the color red. So as you walk into the store, you're glancing around, you're looking around, you're scanning the showroom, you're scanning the store looking for something. What are you looking for? Red t-shirts. Now, let's say you did not trust the store person, the sales assistant. You do not trust this lady. She comes back with a bag, and in there is a shirt, possibly. Would you not observe what's in the bag if you didn't trust this person? Why? Just to make sure it's not pink. So you would look, wouldn't you? You would. So let's now ask ourselves this question then. Why do we look at certain things and some things we just see? And we don't go to look. We see, but we don't look. But then there are other things that it's not okay just to see. You have to look at them. Why? It's time to think. Going back to the storeroom, the reason that we wanted to look as you walked into the store was because you loved the color red. Because you like the color red, you want to bring into your world red. Because you like red. And in your mind, you're thinking, hey, red is a lovely color. Is it not? Yes. Red's a really lovely color. So I want to bring red into my world. What about the color pink, though? That's not a lovely color. That's a really poor choice. Pink? Who loves pink? I detest pink. I absolutely hate the color pink. So is it enough just to see, or do you have to look to make sure it's not pink? You have to look. So, with that example, let's now start to think, why do we look at certain things and why are we just okay with seeing others? Every time we look, aren't we in the exercise of either bringing into our world the things that we love, the things that we like, the things that we are attached to, or avoiding the things that we don't like, avoiding the things that we dislike, avoiding the things that we detest, we hate? Isn't that why we look? And we are not just okay with seeing? Going back on the road, why did we stop to look at the flowers? To bring into our world things that we like, the things that we love, the things that we are so attached to. Why did we also look at the pile of dog poo? To avoid. But the cars, the grass, the stones, I'll ask you the question. How many stones did you pass on the way here? You don't know. Why? Because you didn't look. You saw them, didn't you? But you didn't look. How many trees did you see on the way here? You don't know. But let's say you're a bird watcher. And you love watching birds. You love watching, I don't know. Anyone a bird watcher? Okay, let's say you love watching peacocks. That's a hobby. Now, as you set out on your way here, would you not be checking the roads? Are there any peacocks that I can see on the way? I remember when we used to drive towards Trinco and those areas. You used to look out through the window watching peacocks, just looking for peacocks. I love peacocks. So the things that I love, the things that I like, I look at so I can bring them into my world. Other things, everything else really, I'm just okay with seeing them. I don't need to look at them. So what are these things then that we like to look at? It's the things that bring us pleasure. Or at least, so we think. So we think. We think the color red brings us pleasure. And we think the color pink brings us displeasure. One brings us joy, the other brings us pain. What about the flowers? Flowers bring us joy, flowers bring us happiness and pleasure. But what about piles of dog poo? No, we don't like that. It doesn't bring us pleasure, it brings us displeasure. So we try to avoid looking at them. Everything else, whatever. Show them if you have to, I'll see them. I'm not really fussed. I'm not particularly fussed if I see them or not. Right? Agree with me so far? Okay. Now let me ask you the question. Does the color red have pleasure within it? The color red, does it have, is an attribute of the color red pleasure? No. What about the color pink? Does it have displeasure as an attribute of it? Is that a quality of the color pink? Displeasure? Okay, what about stones? Or rather, flowers? Is pleasure, is beauty an attribute or a characteristic of flowers? Is it? There's a question. I have flowers at home. People are thinking, I have a flower bed at home. I'm a horticulturist and I spend a lot of time attending to my flower beds. So surely flowers bring pleasure then. Do they? Okay, what about piles of dog poo? Is displeasure, distastefulness, unpleasantness an attribute, a characteristic of dog poo? Is it? No. So then let's ask ourselves the question then, why do we look at things and not just happy with seeing things? Because we believe our view is such that the outside world brings us pleasure. The outside world, there are things in the outside world that brings us pleasure. There are things in the outside world that brings us displeasure. Or that steals our pleasure, that takes away my pleasure. So I have to avoid them at any cost. Things that bring me pleasure, I have to bring them into my world at any cost. Things that take away my pleasure, I have to avoid them at any cost. Isn't this why we look? Let me give another example. Now you all have a tongue, don't you? Well, we all have a tongue. What's your favorite food? Oh, I know that. Pizza. What's the food that you don't really like to eat, but your mother forces you to eat? Yes, I knew that. I saw that coming. You're just like our Podiswami Nuhanses at the temple. Mallum. We don't like that. Now, let's think for a moment, what do our tongues do? Yes, our tongues help us talk. Put that to a side. We're not talking about being able to talk. What else do our tongues do? Our tongues taste. It tastes whatever we put into our mouths. Now, the strange thing is though, certain things that it tastes, it's ever so eager to pull them inwards, down to the stomach. And yet there are other things that it's ever so keen to push out. No, you're not coming in. No, absolutely not. Except when the mothers sat behind saying, eat it, or I will beat you. You will eat that if that's the last thing you do today. Mallum. Because now you're not prepared to experience the physical pain. So, let's imagine we didn't have a tongue. Let's imagine we didn't have a need to talk. So, let's put talk into a side. That's not what we are interested in right now. Let's imagine we didn't have a tongue. Pizza and Mallum, wouldn't they both go in at the same speed? Without a fuss? Would we be particularly interested in taking in one versus the other? Would we be interested in spitting out the other and taking in one if we didn't have a tongue? No, let's say, for instance, they both have the same amount of nutriment. The same amount, it's the same nutriments, right? We're not interested in that either. We're not talking about how much carbohydrates got bad fats and cholesterol, none of that stuff. I'm just saying, taste. If we weren't able to taste the food that we were taking in, and we didn't have taste that we like and taste that we didn't like, anything goes, right? Anything goes. What about the ear? Why do we turn our heads and point our ears in certain directions and then cover our ears when we hear other things? Because there are things that we like and things that we don't like. Because we believe that pleasure exists in the sights, the sounds, the smells, the tastes and the touch that we experience. As well as the dhammas as well. The dhammas that we can sense through our mind, the mind faculty. So these 6 inputs that come from the outside world, we believe, for as long as we believe that pleasure is a characteristic, is an attribute of that object in the outside world, what are we going to have to do? Use our eyes to look. Seeing is not enough. You got to look. Because if there are things that bring us pleasure, then there is always going to be things that take away our pleasure. Right? Because it's 2 sides of the same coin. When there are things that bring you pleasure, there'll always be things that take away the pleasure. But is pleasure an attribute or a characteristic of the color red? No. Is it an attribute of the color pink? No. So as a matter of fact, does red bring you any more pleasure than the color pink? How much pleasure does red bring us? None. The red color, does it bring us pleasure? No. So how much pleasure does it bring compared to pink? None. How much does pink bring us compared to purple? How much pleasure does it bring us? None. What about the color brown? How much pleasure does that bring us compared to red? Still none. Because the color does not bring us pleasure. Sounds don't bring us pleasure. Flowers don't bring us pleasure. Dog poo does not steal my pleasure. Because pleasure is not something that is a part of the outside object. However, what does our view, our distorted view tell us? Our distorted perception tell us? Our distorted consciousness tells us? Viparita ditti, viparita sanya, viparita chitta. What do they tell us? That pleasure and displeasure are both attributes, are both characteristics of the outside objects. The sights, sounds, smells, tastes and touch and the dhammas, they bring me pleasure, they bring me displeasure. Therefore, I have to look at them to make sure that pleasurable things are brought into my world and displeasurable things can be avoided. Isn't this why we look? Is looking a vipaka or a karma? Looking. It's a karma. How about seeing? That's a vipaka. Looking is a karma. Seeing is a vipaka. So then, let me ask you this question. Why do we do karmas now? So we're connecting the dots, and then we'll see the final picture after you join the dots. Why do we do karma then? To bring pleasure into our world and to avoid displeasure. To take away the things, to throw away the things from our world that we believe take away my pleasure. So we have to avoid them as much as we possibly can. This is why we do karma. But vipaka? Anything goes. Anything goes. Now, when we come to the complete understanding, perfect understanding that actually red is no different to pink, pink is no different to brown, brown's no different to purple. None of the colors in the rainbow actually bring me any amount of pleasure or take away my pleasure, because pleasure is not an attribute or a characteristic of the color. do you any longer have to turn your eyes, do karma, to look at colors? Will you be doing that? Will you? No. What about sounds? When you understand, when you have perfected the knowledge that pleasure is not something that exists in the sound, displeasure is also not something that exists in the sound, will you need to turn your head, to point your ear in that direction, to listen to particular sounds and avoid others? Will you have to listen, or will you be just happy with hearing? Listen to me. Is that a karma or a vipaka? That's a karma. Can you hear what I'm saying? That's a vipaka. Can you hear me? That's a vipaka. Are you listening to me? That's a karma. Looking and seeing, listening and hearing. Karma and vipaka. Now, unfortunately, for the other senses, the words are the same. There's no word in English, as far as I know, for smelling. You can smell something and you can smell something. Right? There's no word for karma and vipaka. I don't think they're two different words. Well, there's touching and feeling, I suppose. What about tasting? Again, it's the same, I think. I don't think there are two words for the karma and the vipaka. They're the same. You can taste something and, you can taste something. But thankfully, when it comes to sight, when it comes to listening, now you have two words, as well as touch, I suppose. You can look at things, you can see things. You can hear things, and you can listen to things, and you can hear things. You can touch things, and you can feel things. So there's karma and there's vipaka. However, once we come to the understanding that pleasure is not something that is an attribute or a characteristic of the outside of world, do we from that point forward do karma? Do we? Now, why don't Arihatun Vahanses do karma? What knowledge have they perfected? That pleasure does not exist in the outside world. Displeasure is not a characteristic of the outside world. They have perfected that knowledge. Let's go back into the store where we bought our t-shirts. When we knew that it wasn't red and we knew that it wasn't pink, if we were convinced of that because we trusted the salesperson, we no longer needed to open the bag and observe what color the shirt was, the t-shirt was. If we are no longer interested in looking, whatever goes, right? Whatever color is fine. So if we are no longer interested in looking, do we any longer have a point in performing the karma of looking? Because if whatever is okay, then do you need to look again? No. If that is the case, do you need the organ, the eyes that help you look? Will you need it? Let me ask you the question again. Beg your pardon, sir? Yeah, so my question is, if you are of the understanding that red is the same as pink, it's the same as I'm not saying it's the same color, right? You get what I'm saying. None of these colors can bring me pleasure. None of these colors can take away pleasure from my world, right? Because pleasure is not an attribute of the outside world. If we have perfected that knowledge, do we any longer need to exert our eyes to perform the action of looking? No. If we are no longer needing to look, do we need an organ that helps us look? Now I know what some of you are thinking. What about seeing though? You do need your organ of sight so you know where you're going. That I understand, that I accept. And if that's what you were thinking, well done. Clever ones. Very good that you were thinking about that. The reason that we use our eyes to check where we are going is that's not for mental pleasure. Because we are not talking about the physical realm here. We are talking about the mental realm. Does red bring us mental happiness? Mental or psychological happiness. Does it bring us mental happiness? No. Does purple bring us that? Or pink bring us that? Does it take away my mental happiness? Make me sad? Really? Does it? No. So if that being, forget the physical, right? Of course, you need the eyes to make sure that what you're eating is something that's edible. You need your eyes to make sure that when you're walking, you don't bang yourself on something. You need your eyes to make sure that when you're sitting somewhere safe. Forget all that stuff because that's all talking about the physical realm. Forget all that for a moment. I'll come back to that. We're talking about mental happiness. Answer this question. Do your eyes help you really bring mental happiness? No. Do your ears help you bring real, true mental happiness? But then what is this happiness that we object? Don't you love looking at flowers? Don't you look at piles of dog poo so you can avoid it? Yes, we do. So why do we use our eyes for that? Because we believe that pleasure exists in the outside world. This is our view, this is our belief, this is our understanding, as well as displeasure is a characteristic of the outside world objects. So some objects in this world we have to exert energy to bring into our world. This is what we use our senses for. And other objects in this world we have to exert our senses to avoid them, push them away, remove them from our world. All of that is karma. But if we are talking simply about the mental realm, none of these rupas. Red never brought me mental happiness. Pink never took away my happiness. But what did? Attachment and the vexation that arose the moment we were attached to it. And then relief from vexation. That is what we experienced as pleasure. So is pleasure then a function of the outside world or a function of the inside world? It's a function of the inside world. If you were to draw a graph, pleasure on one axis, colors on the other axis. This has to be a scientific method, a scientific experiment. Okay? We're doing a scientific experiment where we are plotting pleasure on, let's say, the y-axis, and then on the x-axis we have colors. We have red, we have pink, we have blue, grey, orange, and so on and so forth. Now I ask you to plot this graph. And you have zero attachment. So you are an arahant. And I'm asking you to plot this graph. Please, go ahead and plot this graph whereby you jot on this graph the colors that bring you pleasure. And then on the negative axis, you plot on this graph the colors that bring you displeasure. Is this something that you can actually do? Will you be able to do what I'm asking you to do? You'll be like, what did you just ask me to do? Sorry, I don't get it. What did I ask you to do? Plot on this graph, on the positive axis, the colors that bring you pleasure. Because on the x-axis we have all the various colors. On the y-axis you have pleasure. So 0 to, let's say, 100, and then 0 to minus 100 on the downward axis. And this axis is pleasure. So increase in pleasure and decrease in pleasure. And you are an arahant. You have zero attachment, zero ignorance. Will you be able to do what I've just asked you to do? No. Why? Because pleasure is not a function of the color. You can only plot a graph if the two variables that you use are dependent variables. Perform a function in producing the result of that graph. Let's say fire, for instance. On one axis you have oxygen. On the other axis you have, let's say, the temperature. Or let's say the size of the fire. The size of the flame. Okay? The more oxygen you put in, the more the flame's going to grow. Because oxygen is a factor, it's a determining factor of the size of the flame, of the size of the fire. But what about color and pleasure? Can you plot that graph? No, you can't plot that graph. So if you can't plot that graph then once we have come to the understanding that pleasure is not something that is part of the color, do we any longer need eyes to help us find that pleasure? Because right now, what do we use our eyes for? An organ for? Pleasure. Isn't your eyes an organ to find pleasure? Is it not a pleasure organ? What about the ears? Is it not an organ that we use to seek pleasure? What about the tongue? What about the sense of smell? If you think about the things that you do on a regular day, right? On an average day, how many times do you use your eyes to really just get about versus the times you use your eyes to seek pleasure? Which beats the other? You use your eyes mostly to do what? Seek pleasure. But can the eyes give you pleasure? No. Because the eyes what can the eyes only do? Bring an imprint of the colors that exist in the outside world. Now, is happiness, is pleasure a function of the color? Does pleasure exist in the color? No. So if the eyes can only do nothing other than bring in color through that organ, what good is the eye in bringing us pleasure? Zero. I'm talking about real happiness. I'm not talking about the pleasure that arises when you attach and then, relieve from... Not that. I'm talking about real happiness. Real happiness. Can the eye really be treated as a pleasure organ then? Or at least a happiness-producing organ? No. So can the eye bring us happiness? What about the ear? Can it bring us happiness? No. What about the nose? What about the tongue? Can it bring us happiness? No. Why? Because all these organs can do is bring in sights, sounds, smells, tastes from the outside world. Now, does happiness exist in sights, sounds, smells and tastes? Well, if they don't exist in the outside world, what good is it in bringing them into the inside world if they don't have the stuff that we're looking for in them? You go online, you place an order. The delivery driver arrives and he brings a box. You're expecting, let's say, a hair straightener. I don't know where that came from, but whatever. Hair straightener. This is what you went online and ordered. You open the box, it's empty. It's empty. You go back online and you file a claim. You say, hey, I ordered that. Nothing arrived. It was just an empty box. They say, hey, don't worry. Just place another order. There was an error in our system. Just place another order and we'll send you one. They send you another box. You open it. It's empty. How many more times are you going to keep ordering from the same store? Aren't you just going to ask for a refund? Let's say you do it a third time and it still comes back an empty box. Do you not realize that there's an error in the process? At their manufacturing plant or at their packing plant, there's a problem in the process. They cannot meet my requirement. My requirement is I need a pair of hair straighteners. You place the order, you pay up front, and then the box arrives, you open the box and it's empty. You do it once, you do it twice, you do it thrice. Are you going to place that order again? Or are you just going to go and look for another vendor? You're just going to go and ask for a refund, right? Now, you know where I'm going with this. Every time you opened your eyes, what did you place an order for? Pleasure, right? Happiness? What did you receive? Did you receive a box full of pleasure, or did you just receive an empty box? So the first time you got an empty box, what did you do the second time? You went back online and you ordered again. Hey, first time, no, didn't get it. But I'm sure what? Second time, I'm going to get it. So you place the order again. The box arrives. You open it up. What's in it? Nothing, it's empty. You do it a third time. You do it a fourth time. How many times do you have to keep saying you do it this many times before you say, Swami Nuhansa, you're a real fool to keep doing that? If I were to tell you I did that 10 times over, what are you going to think of me? Are you nuts? Is what you're going to be asking me, wouldn't you? I know why you're ashamed to answer that question. Because you know my second question. What did you open your eyes for all this time? Ever since you came into this world, putting aside the times where you opened your eyes to make sure that what you were going to eat was actually edible, putting aside the times to make sure that you used your eyes, your ears, your all your 5 senses to make sure that you were able to get along in life, just go about attending to your bodily needs, putting all that to aside. What did we really use our organs for? To receive empty boxes, empty orders. But every single time, did you not go back and order another one? Did we not order another one? Why is this box empty? What are we ordering? Pleasure, happiness. We are ordering pleasure. Why is this box empty? Because? Absolutely. Well done. Because there is no pleasure to be sent in a box. Because there is no pleasure in the outside world to pack up into a box it up and send to you. That's why it always arrives and you always find an empty box. Answer this question. When was the last time you went to the barber, a salon, and you asked for a loaf of bread? You walk up to the salon and it says open. So you knock on the door. They go, oh, welcome madam. Please come on in, take a seat. What can I do for you today? I would like a loaf of bread, please. How many times did you do that? And what are they going to say? Sorry, you want what? I'd like a loaf of bread, please. Sorry, madam, we don't do bread. We are a salon. Yeah, I don't care. I just want bread. No, madam, I don't think you get the point. This is a salon. We can give you a facial. We can cut your hair. We can beautify you. We can do your pedicure, a manicure. We can do all that stuff. We don't sell bread here. I don't care. I need bread. How many times did you find yourself doing that? Aren't you going to get kicked out of this shop? Aren't they going to be ringing up the mental hospital and ask you to come and take you? So now you know where I'm going with this. Does pleasure exist in the sights? In the rupa? Does pleasure exist in sounds? Shabda? Does pleasure exist in smells? Gandha? Does pleasure exist in taste? Rasa? Does pleasure exist in sensations? Touch? I'm not talking about the physical. Put that all to aside. We are only talking about the mental realm here. I mean, yes, you rub your hand on something that feels pleasurable. That is true, I agree with that. But that's just the physical. Don't you attach yourself to that mentally as well? I mean, you can rub yourself on a piece of cloth. Why do you have to go and rub yourself on somebody else? That's all mental, is it not? Because touch is touch. It's the same receptors that are being stimulated as you rub your own hand on the other hand. So why do you need your partner to come and rub your hand? What, different kind of skin? Isn't that all mental? That's all mental. So if you never walked into a barber's, if you never went into a salon and ordered bread, why did you go up to Rupa and say, hey, make me happy? Give me pleasure. Do they serve pleasure? Does pleasure exist in the Rupa, in the Shabda, in the Gandha, Rasa and Sparsha? In the sight, sound, smells and taste and touch? Does pleasure exist in them? So if we walk up to them and say, hey, give me pleasure, is that not akin to going into a barber's, into a salon and asking, hey, can you give me a loaf of bread? Isn't that madness? If it did exist, that's okay. But do they have pleasure to give you? Do they have what you're asking for? Sight, sound, smells, taste and touch, do they have what you're asking for? If they don't have what you're asking for, can they give it to you? So why keep asking then? So this is something that I now contemplate on every day. Because this has to be practical. Yes, we talk about the theory. This is, absolutely, there's a theoretical side to this. But what's the practical side to this? There's a very strong practical side to this. When you're walking along the road, you want to get from point A to point B. Let's say you're driving your car. Remember, I think a couple of weeks ago, I gave you a challenge. As a passenger in a car, I asked you to do something. Did you try it out? Do you remember what it was? Do you remember what it was? As a passenger in the rear seat, as you're being driven, don't look outside the windows, just look at the seat in front of you throughout the journey. See if that's something that you can bear. See if you're going to be okay with that. If you forgot to do that week when I asked you to, well, I've reminded you now. Try it out this week. Forget the week, just your journey home. Look, just stare at the seat in front of you. Isn't that still Rupa? Isn't that a Rupa? Are Rupas only only outside your window? Or isn't your seat a Rupa as well? That's a Rupa. But we find it so difficult to keep staring at the seat in front of us. We are so inclined to keep turning our heads, looking outside this window, looking outside that window, looking outside the windscreen. Why? Why do we always look? Remember, looking versus seeing. So why do we look? You should know the answer now. Because we believe that pleasure exists in the outside world. Does it though? So every time you look now, here's a question you can ask yourself. Why have I just walked into a salon and asked for a loaf of bread? Won't you feel ridiculous about yourself? That's an example I came with. You can come up with a different one. Let's say you go into a car showroom and you ask for half a kilo of carrots. Come up with whatever you can come up with. Oh, let's say you're a musician. You love your music. You love to play the flute. You like the sound that comes from a flute. If you love the sound of the flute, is there any good in trying to get that sound by playing a piano? What about a violin? Or a harmonica? Are you going to get the same sound? Well, looking at Rupa, expecting to find pleasure in it, isn't that the same as playing a piano and expecting to hear the sound of a flute? Why can the piano not give you that sound? Because it doesn't have it. That's not the sound that it makes. So, all Rupas in this entire world, in this entire universe, is there any Rupa in this entire universe that really has happiness within it? It's just waiting to give you happiness? All you have to do is look at it. Are there Rupas like that? No, because happiness, pleasure does not exist in the outside world. But yes, I agree, we do experience happiness. We do experience this pleasure. And where does that come from then? Absolutely. When you have an attachment towards something, you attach yourself to something, now you start this feeling of vexation, kicks off. Believe me. Now you're suffering. Who created this suffering? Yourself. You created your own suffering. Now you go and look at the sight and say, hey, that just relieved me from my suffering. But what really happened? What were you attached to? That object. So now you got to see the object. Now you feel that happiness was provided to me, given to me, gifted to me by the outside object. But really what happened? You were attached to it. Now then you started to suffer. Now you experience relief from suffering. That is what we experience as pleasure. Aren't we but fools to think that pleasure exists in the outside world? Now, isn't this a really practical thing to do then? As you go about your day-to-day work, your day-to-day business, walking along the road, let's say you go shopping. To get to the shop, all you need is to make sure that you're safe. You have to make sure that there are no cars, there's no traffic, or you're going to jump into traffic. You don't need to do any of that. And also you have to make sure that there are no piles of dog poo that you go and step on, right? But everything else, why do you need to look at a bed of flowers if what you're doing is on your way to go shopping? Now, I said I'll come back to the physical realm as well, just to be fair. Fair and square. Sights can, sounds can, smells and tastes and touch. Well, particularly touch, more than sights. Or rather, let me put it this way. Rupa, Shabda, Gandha, Rasa, Sparsha, they can relieve you from pain. Not the mental pain though. They can relieve you from physical pain. How so? You're feeling hungry. What do you eat? Food. What is food if not the aggregation of sights and sounds and smells and tastes and touch? Again, it's Apo, Tejo, Vayo, Patavi. It's not the sight of the food that relieved you from your physical pain. It's the food itself. It was something solid. So that's why I said, particularly touch, more so than the sights and sounds and smells and so on. But let's say there's a fire at home. How are you going to know there's a fire at home? You're going to touch it? No, you're going to smell it. That's the first thing you're going to sense. You're going to sense smell because there's going to be smoke. Then you're going to go sniffing around, where's the fire? Now you're going to see the fire. Now you're going to start running towards or away from the fire. Hopefully away from the fire. So isn't sight and sound helpful in that situation? To relieve you from which pain now? Physical, mental or physical? Physical. Because if your body got burned, is that a mental pain or physical pain? That's physical pain. So don't sights and sounds and smells and tastes. Okay, let's take taste for example. You've been served something. Have you not experienced times when you just put something into your mouth and you taste it's foul and you then spit it out immediately? That's gone bad. Don't eat that putta. We've done that so many times, right? So isn't that saving us from future physical pain? Because if you were to take that in, chances are you're going to get an infection. Or at least an indigestion. So you avoid that food. To avoid what though? Physical pain, absolutely sir. To avoid the physical pain. So absolutely, sights, sounds, smells and tastes and touch help us relieve ourselves from physical pain. But do they do anything at all to help us relieve ourselves from mental pain? Because pleasure does not exist in them. But what about physical pleasure? Yes. This is why the Buddha said it's okay to consume the four requisites. He never said don't eat. What else can sate your hunger if not for food? Isn't food something that exists in the outside world? So is it fair to say, hey, we got no interaction with the outside world, I've got nothing to do with the outside world? Is that fair to say? No, because we do need the help of the outside world to relieve ourselves from physical pain. For that, absolutely we need our eyes, our nose, our tongue, our body, our nose, right? All our 5 senses, we absolutely need them to relieve ourselves from the physical pain. But do they do anything to help us relieve ourselves? Or rather, at least redeem ourselves? Relief? Yes, because that's what you are attached to. But pleasure does not exist in the outside world. This is why when you eat, after you've eaten, do you still feel hungry? Do you still feel hungry after you've eaten? No. But you watch a movie. At the end of the movie, do you still not want to watch another movie? So did it treat the problem? No. But didn't food treat the problem? Yes. What about medicine? You're ill. You take a tablet. Now, you're feeling better. So did it not fix the problem? It fixed the problem. But you want to listen to a song, some music that you like. You listen to it once. At the end of that song, do you not want to rewind and listen to it again? So did it fix the problem? So do sight, sound, smell, taste and touch fix the mental problem? Does it? Do they? Why? Because they don't have what it takes to fix it. That's why. If they don't have what it is that you seek, why do we keep going and asking for it? That's like what? Going into a salon and asking for a loaf of bread. How many times should you ask for a loaf of bread before you get one? You're going to get one in the face, not a loaf of bread, if you keep asking enough times. So you see, this is something now that you can practice. Let's say you need to brush. It's early morning and it's time to get ready for work, get ready for school. So what do? You go into the bathroom and now you get yourself some toothpaste. It's time to brush. And now you're brushing away. Now, of course, toothpaste has a particular kind of taste. Now, how helpful is this taste in cleaning your teeth? So why do you go and pick the toothpaste when you go shopping for toothpaste at the supermarket? No, that one I don't like the taste of. Oh, menthol? Oh, I like that one. Mint? That I like. Why do you avoid some toothpaste and you go for the others? I'm not talking about, the cleansing power of the toothpaste or the fluorides or whatnot. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking, some people pick their toothpaste based on what? Taste. Some people pick their toothpaste based on what? What it looks. Why do you think toothpaste has been made? There are some toothpaste that glitter. Why? It glitters so much, you take it on a toothbrush, you can see yourself in it. It's like a mirror. Why? Is this helping in any way, shape or form to clean your teeth? Why are we brushing our teeth? Now think the same about your wardrobes. If it's nudity that you want to cover, what are the only types of clothes that help you do that? What are the other types of clothes that don't help you do that? What kind of design must the shirt or the frock or the sari have so that it can cover your nudity? What design must it be? Okay, what color must it be then? What kind of embroidery must it have? Huh? Can you answer these questions? Can you? No, you can't answer these questions. Why? Is it because I've asked the wrong question? No, because you don't have an answer. Because we use clothes for the wrong purpose. Why do you not see any embroidery on my robe? Why don't you see any sequins on my robe? Why don't you see any designs on my robe? Because why do I wear a robe? To look pretty? To look handy-dandy? No, to cover myself from the elements, to protect myself from the wind, from the rain, from the sun, from mosquitoes, from insects, and to cover my nudity, to cover places that shouldn't be exposed in the public. That's what I use clothes for. For that, the Buddha said, absolutely use it. No problem. Anything beyond that, now you've gone mad. True or false? Is what I am saying the truth or not? What about hair on the head? What does hair do? It helps protect your scalp, right? It helps protect your head from the sun, and perhaps from the rain. What cut must you have so that it protects you from the sun? Okay, what color must it be? By the way, I'm not insulting anybody. Okay, please don't take it as an insult. I just want us to have an intelligent conversation. This is simply an intelligent conversation. What color must the hair be so that it serves its real purpose, its true purpose? Can't grey hair serve the purpose of protecting your scalp? So why must we color it then? Again, absolutely no insult. Please don't take it that way. This is a conversation. This is a discussion for intelligent people, not for fools. If all of a sudden you think, how dare he insult me? And I thought I look so pretty in this color. This is not an insult. This is just something for us to think about. I mean, some people dye their hair grey so that they look elderly, so they look mature. Some people do that. So what color must it be so that hair serves its purpose? What color must skin be so it serves its purpose? Some people go through procedures to change the complexion of their skin. What shape must your body be so that it serves its purpose? Men and women, you all know, right? People go through procedures to change the shape of their bodies. Why? Is that serving a physical problem or a mental problem? It's serving a mental problem. But does it have the fix for the problem? See? Aren't we but fools if we try to seek happiness in doing that, in going through that course of action? That's berserk. That's madness. That's entire foolishness. But the thing is, when you fall into association with ignoble and immoral people, they give this view into our heads. They plant this seed in our minds. Hey, sights, they make you happy. Makes me happy. So it ought to make you happy. Go look. Don't just be happy with seeing. Do what? Look. Don't just be happy with hearing. Do what? Listen. Don't just be happy with feeling. Go and do what? Touch. And then all of a sudden you are tempted to touch. There's a song, right? I remember from my old days. All of a sudden you are tempted to look. All of a sudden you are tempted to listen. All of a sudden you are tempted to touch. To use these organs to perform karma. In the hope that it makes you happy. In the hope that it's going to bring you pleasure. But isn't this process fundamentally flawed? Fundamentally flawed. You are not going to you're not going to find a modicum of happiness by following this process. So is it not time we put a stop to that process then? This is why I say, ladies and gentlemen, this is a very practical process. So when you walk, it's not just a case of, I'm walking now, hey, left foot forward, right foot forward, march, left foot forward, right foot forward, march. That's not what you ought to be doing really. What you ought to be doing is, why am I walking? Why am I looking? Why am I turning my head to listen to these sounds? Why am I flicking my tongue to take in these tastes? Why am I caressing this whatever it is, to experience this pleasure, this sensations, these tactile sensations. All this to do what? To find pleasure. But does pleasure exist in that outside object? No. So aren't I a fool then? Why do you think an Arahatan Vahanse, when he walks, he just glances down, he doesn't turn his head looking around, observing the outside world? Why does he not do that? Is it because someone's going to think bad of him? Is it because someone's going to think, hey, look at that guy? He's not, he's very, he's not disciplined. Is that why an Arahant doesn't do that? That may be why I do that. That may be why I do that. But not an Arahant. I would be uttering a lie if I were to say that there are sights towards which I still turn my head and glance. I'd be lying to say that doesn't happen. Because if that were the case, what would I be saying? I'm an Arahant. I'm not an Arahant. It would be a lie for me to say that there are sounds towards which I don't turn my head and listen. I'm not okay with hearing. I have to listen. I still listen. All of these are karmas, for which there will be vipakas. But for an Arahatun Vahanse, the reason he doesn't turn his head upside, up, down, left, right, center is because doesn't an Arahant like to be happy? Does he not like physical happiness? He does. Does he not like mental happiness? He does. That's why he became an Arahant. He wouldn't have gone through the process of becoming an Arahant if he didn't want mental happiness. But does he not know that mental happiness does not exist in the outside world? Does he or doesn't he know this? He knows this 100%, without a shadow of a doubt. He knows that. So what is the point then in turning my head to look at sights? If happiness cannot be gained by looking at it, what is the point now? Useful or useless? Useless. It's like feeding baby Natasha. Because baby Natasha is the self, and the self is pleasure. The pleasure world is the self that we create. That is the baby Natasha. So we are trying to feed baby Natasha equals, we are trying to fortify, we are trying to nurture the self equals, we are trying to experience this pleasure world. But when pleasure doesn't exist in the outside world, now what is the point of feeding that baby? 0 point, right? You will have heard this. Sabbe Dhamma Anattati. Why? What is Sabbe Dhamma? We've spoken about this in the past. Swa Abba. Swa is what? Self. Abba is to produce, to fortify, to nurture, right? This is what Swa Abba is. Sabba is that. Sabbe Dhamma. Dhamma are these thoughts. You can take them to be thoughts, right? In simple terms, thoughts, ideas that come into your mind, conceptions. Conceptions, thoughts, ideas that come into your mind that tell you, hey, experience pleasure, enjoy pleasure, feed the baby. These are these thoughts, these are these sentiments. Feed the baby. When you know that a baby does not exist, isn't that a pointless thought, a pointless idea, a pointless notion? When there is no baby to feed? Imagine this. There are two groups at war. A battle. Both sides have equal numbers. There's a king on either side, and they're now at battle. But one team's better than the other. One group, one army is better than the other. So they destroy the other army. Except for one guy. This is just a mere soldier. He's not even the king. So once the king's defeated, the war's won, right? That's how it happens. Once the king's gone, that's it, checkmate. But now there's a soldier. This soldier, he's ignorant. He's a fool. He glances over the other side of the battlefield and he sees his enemy, and there are many hundreds, if not thousands of soldiers on the other side. He's by himself. He picks up a weapon and he says, I'm going to take you all down. Come on, fight. He gets this idea. And now with his weapon, he starts running towards the enemy. There are hundreds, if not thousands of soldiers on the other side. They have elephants. They have weapons of all types, shapes, sizes. This idea that this man has just had, is it a wise one or a foolish one? What really should he be doing right now? Running for his life. If he's the only man left standing, then he should be running for his life. At least I'm saved. There's no point fighting anymore. I'm the only man standing. So the thought, the idea, the notion that comes into his mind now to go fight despite the fact that they've lost entirely, is that a useful idea or a useless idea? Sara or asara? Asara. Because is that going to achieve the purpose that he's going to fight for? Is he going to win this battle? 1 against 1,000,000. Is he going to win this battle? No. So useful or useless? Essence-full or essence-less? Essence-less. Now what about feeding a baby that does not exist? Essence-full or essence-less? How about going into a salon and asking for a loaf of bread? Essence-full or essence-less? Meaningful or meaningless? Well, then I ask you again, ladies and gentlemen, why do you open your eyes, look at sights, and then say, make me happy? Why then do you listen to sounds, songs, call it songs if you like. Make me happy, radio, FM. Why are you so busy tuning your radio stations? Why are you so busy tuning your televisions, trying to catch the right TV channels? Why are you doing all these karmas? Because you think that pleasure exists in the outside world. How many hours of TV will you have to watch before you will be satisfied? How many hours of computer games will you have to play, Buddha, before you will be satisfied? Does happiness exist in a computer game? See? See, it's time to think then. This has to be practical. So the next time you open your eyes, here's what you have to do. This is Indriya Bhavana. This is Indriya Bhavana. This is the contemplation of the faculties. What do I have this faculty of sight for? Don't sights help me? Sights do help us relieve from pain. True or false? Which pain though? Physical. So you open your eye in the hope of relieving yourself from physical pain. Meaningful or meaningless? Meaningful. You open your eye to relieve yourself from mental pain. Meaningful or meaningless? Meaningless. Now every time you open your eyes, is this not something that you can contemplate on? Is this not something you can reflect on? Every time you turn your ear towards something, every time you serve yourself some food, you walk up to the fridge. Remember what I said? You are after a glass of water. You're thirsty, you need a drink of water, you walk up to your fridge, the fridge opens, now you see a box of chocolates. What did you walk up to the fridge for? But where does your arm reach and touch? What does it reach out for? The box of chocolates. Why? What belief are you in right now? Happiness exists in the box of chocolates. Pleasure exists in the box of chocolates. For as long as you are in that view, for as long as you are in that belief, that distorted view, that distorted perception, that distorted consciousness, sentiment, you are forever going to be doing karma in the hope of trying to achieve pleasure from a world in which pleasure does not exist. Aren't we all doomed? I mean, seriously, think about this. You know, if we weren't aware of this, for someone who has no knowledge of this, think about this, everything we do. I mean, like I said, think about the last 24 hours you spent. would it not be fair for me to say that 80% of the time in the last 24 hours, you would have spent using your sense organs to find mental happiness, in seeking mental happiness? Is it unfair for me to suggest that? 80%, let's put 20%. Okay, let's put 30. I'll be even more fair. Let's put 50. I'll give you 50. 50% of the last 24 hours, so a complete 12 hours, you used your 5 senses. 6 senses even your mind. Let's include 6. All 6 senses to relieve yourself from physical happiness. So relieve yourself from physical pain. Useful or useless? Useful. Meaningful or meaningless? Meaningful. What about the other 12 hours? Meaningful or meaningless? Meaningless. Where's that 12 hours ticking away from? Absolutely. Incredibly valuable, extremely rare human life. Incredibly valuable, extremely rare life in the blissful plane, where you have the only chance to come out of your distorted view, to come out of the distorted perceptions, to come out of the distorted sentiments, and come to true understanding that these 12 hours that I'm spending is absolutely a waste of time. But what if we spend those 12 hours just whiling it away, trying to seek mental happiness? When that mental happiness cannot be found, isn't that 12 hours a waste of time? How many 12 hours have you wasted by now? How old are you? I was being very fair. I said 50-50. In reality, it's more 80-20. If not, 99-1. If not 99-1. Think about it. Incredibly rare, extremely fortunate human life we spend whiling away, doing things that are of no meaning, that are useless, meaningless, futile, not serving purpose. Have we been leading purposeful lives or purposeless lives? Well, you have the answer. Would you like to climb on the rooftop and shout out to the world and say, "Hey, I've been leading a purposeless life"? How would you feel about saying something out like that? Can I bring you up on a radio station, put a microphone to you and say, "Madam, why don't you speak to us and listen to our listeners and talk about your life"? What are you going to have to say now? Well, as it happens, 90% of my life has been meaningless, useless, purposeless, because much of the things that I've been doing in my life did not bring me what I sought, did not bring me what I was looking for. But I kept going back online and ordering each time, and every time I got myself an empty box. Alas, what a pity. Well, I'm no different, ladies and gentlemen. Just today I was speaking to some young monks and I was saying, you know how Guru Swami Nuhanse recently in a sermon he said, that we are all served with the same spoon? Whether you're a lay person or a monk or a clergy, when it's Judgment Day, we're all saved with the same spoon. Or rather, painted by the same brush, whatever idiom you want to use there. What did he mean by that? If you're attached to this world that we live in, if you're attached to the Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankara Vijnana, and you have created this Upadana world, when Judgment Day comes, if you haven't let go, the things that you have this clinging attachment to are going to bring you back into this rebirth cycle. And if you have done things that are one of the 10 unmeritorious deeds, the unwholesome deeds, if you are reminded of them at the moment of death, then that's going to determine where you're going to be born. You'll be watching a video later on about the consequences of people who do deeds to relieve themselves from vexation, not knowing the consequences. I'll talk about that later, but I think it will be quite an eye-opener. It was by popular demand that we thought we'd make it available for you as well. There were some among you who said, Swaminatha, can we make it available for our English listeners as well? So I'll talk about that later on. But think about it. Spending this life just like that, hour after hour, day after day, week after week, year after year, just passing us by, not knowing that what we are doing is not helping us serve the purpose. What a shame that is. What a waste that is. Now do you begin to see that whoever it might have been, let's not say who it was, whoever it might have been who gave us this teaching for the first time, whoever it might have been, isn't this the greatest teaching ever? The greatest discovery ever? Doesn't this discovery help you now to make your lives purposeful? Isn't this the only discovery that makes your lives meaningful? Isn't this the only discovery that really makes you convert your lives to something that is useful? There is nothing wrong in trying to be happy. Like I said, that's why one becomes an arahant, to be happy. And even after you become an arahant, you just want to be happy. Why does an arahatun Vahanse go into Nirodha Samapatti? Which is a state of mind which is the same as having attained Nibbana, but it's temporary. Chittas don't arise at that point. It stops. So it's like a pause. And then once the pause is taken off, it resumes from that point forward. So the maximum time that they can spend is about a week. So even an Arahatun Vahanse is still trying to be happy. Because thoughts arise, pass away. They have to converse, they have to go looking for alms, find shelter, wash, shave. All these things even they have to do. But for that week, nothing. So it's not unfair that you all seek happiness. That's not the problem. The problem is in seeking happiness by doing the wrong things. Think again, some of the stuff that we spoke about in our very first sermons. All the things that we've been doing in our lives. Doing jobs, right? Yeah, okay, some of the money that we earn from doing a job, yes, of course we use to feed our hunger, to get ourselves a roof over our heads, to clothe ourselves, to relieve ourselves from physical ailments. All that is fine. But are you happy with earning just that amount? Or do you want to earn more than what you really need? There's needing and then there's wanting. Requirements, needs and requirements. I remember learning in business studies. Needs and requirements. One's a requirement because you require it. This is why they're called the 4 requisites. The 4 things that every human being requires. Food, shelter, clothing and medicines. They are called requisites. But what about the wants? They are all additional stuff because none of them are really there to serve the purpose of physical pain. They are not there to relieve you from physical pain. All of that is to relieve us from mental pain. But do they really and truly relieve us or actually give us the happiness that we seek? So all this life that we've spent, can we get it back? Okay, let's say you spent your life earning a lot of money. You go and give this money back to your employer. Can you get back the time that you spent working for them? Because that's what you got paid for, right? The time that you spent there. And the work that you did while you were there. You go back to them and say, hey, I'll give you back all the money that you paid me. Give me back the time that I gave you. Are you going to get it back? Isn't this why I say this is the most rare, the most incredibly rare asset that you have? Human time that just keeps passing us by, flicking away every moment. Now if we were just going about doing useless, wasteful, meaningless things, stuff, what a shame. So whoever that was who taught us that, hey, this is not what human life is for. What human life is for is really for you to understand that all these things you are doing is just meaningless, tasteless, essenceless. Put it to good use and really redeem yourself from suffering rather than seeking temporary relief. How do you feel about that person right now? If there were such a person, let's say we don't know. If there were such a person, how would you feel about that person right now? How many flowers are you prepared to offer at his or her feet? How many times are you prepared to worship this person? Isn't this the greatest gift that we have all received? Isn't that why the gift of Dhamma excels all gifts? Sabbe Dhamma. Sorry. What's the expression? Sabbe Dhamma. Yes. Sabbadhanam Dhammadhanam Jinati. Thank you. I forgot that. Sabbadhanam Dhammadhanam Jinati. Why? Because the gift that we all have currently at this present moment in time is human birth. But unfortunately we don't know how to spend it. A man that has won the lottery, if he's not knowledgeable about how to use his money, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you will have experienced this in people that you will have come across. In society, the people that you might have even helped, mentoring them and so on and so forth. Some people, they get a windfall of money, sometimes win the lottery, inheritance from their parents and so on, but no understanding of how to use that money, no understanding of how to use that windfall. What do? They go and waste it, they waste their lives, they waste other people's lives and completely destroy themselves. To the point that you begin to think it would have been better had they not won the money in the first place. Because they've now gone from the pan to the fire. If we're not careful, don't we use our human lives for that as well? To fall from the pan to the fire? You'll see in a moment. How when people don't know how to use this valuable asset that is time, human time in the blissful plane, when they don't know how to use this, so they misuse it and abuse it. They cause damage, they wreak havoc beyond wildest imagination, causing calamitous damage to themselves and the world around them. And sometimes, to pay the consequences, it takes them many, many, many eons. It's not a fun time then. So this is why we need to make sure that we're on the right path. Now, of course, you know who that person was that gave us this teaching, right? The Supreme Buddha. Can you imagine the amount of compassion that he might have had in his heart? Can you? No. How can we? Okay, extend your arms and show me infinite. Show me how big is infinite. This big? We wouldn't know one tiny bit of the compassion that he had in his heart. Having discovered that on our behalf, when he had the opportunity to do that at the feet of Lord Deepankara? When he had the opportunity to stop it once and for all? And despite that, he went through samsara to give us this gift, to teach us how to use the greatest asset that we have. Because until then, all we had was power, but not knowledge. Knowledge without power leads to destruction. So this is why we need this knowledge. This is why we seek homage in this knowledge, such that we can find ourselves the path to redeem ourselves from suffering once and for all. How are we doing for time? I don't have a clock on the 5. Already? Good heavens. You have to leave in half an hour, right? Okay. Remember last week I asked you to think about something. I left you with something to ponder over. You know how the moment attachment arises, and then at that moment we begin to experience dukkha. And then in giving, or rather in conducting our speech, body and mind to relieve ourselves from that dukkha, we do sankhara dukkha. And then there comes a point where we experience pleasure, and then that goes into viparinama, and therefore the whole process has to start again. And then we came up with 2 ideas, and I asked you to think about which one do you think works better. Because you can only have one answer. You can't have 2 answers. So I'll remind you, one idea that we proposed was, at the point at which we experience pleasure, there is no dukkha. We don't experience suffering at that point. It's pain-free. The other argument that we put forward was, well actually, isn't there dukkha at that point as well? So these were the 2 arguments, and I encourage you to have a think about it, because now you really must be able to at least start to put 2 and 2 together. Because this is what understanding the Dhamma is all about. If you really understand what dukkha is, understand what sankhara dukkha, and understand what viparinama dukkha is, and how dukkha is nothing but the result of attachment to a world that is anicca, then these things must start to form a picture in your mind. So, do you spend any time thinking about it? I did, along with Guru Swami once. My oracle. So I went to the oracle and I asked him my question, and he was very kind enough to give me an answer. So this is what the oracle said. So he said, the first noble truth of suffering, or dukkha arya satya, is not dukkha. It's not sankhara dukkha. It's not viparinama dukkha. All these 3 are things that we feel. We experience this. This is something we experience. The uneasiness when you have an attachment to something and you feel, I want it. No, you can experience that. And then the things that you do, exerting your mind, your body and your speech to obtain what it is that you desire, acquiring what it is you desire. We experience the pain that lies behind it. This is why we are not willing to repeatedly keep doing it. If the promise of pleasure was not there, would you be prepared to keep doing sankhara? No. So therefore, we have all experienced that sankhara is not pleasurable. It's displeasurable. And then viparinama, of course, needs little explaining. Right? What we have attached to passes away. At that point, we begin to suffer. But what about that point where we experience that moment of pleasure, the ashwada mohata? What about that point? Dukkha. Why is this word repeated? Typo? Dukkha dukkha. Dukke dukkha. So what is the first dukkha? What is the second dukkha? Dukkha dukkha. What's the first? What's the second dukkha? The second dukkha, so I'm speaking about the dukkha that comes after the word dukkha. Okay? Is the dukkha that we've been talking about in terms of, will I be able to do this? Now I've got it, what's going to happen to it? Will someone take it away from me? Will I lose it? Might someone snatch it from me? And then when it goes into viparinama, will I be able to stop it? That is the second dukkha. What about the first though? The first dukkha is a sankata. That's the product that is produced when attachment binds with an anicca world. A world that is anicca. The moment that attachment binds the mind to a world that is anicca, that is conditional. I'll use the word conditional to explain anicca in this context, okay? The moment that attachment binds the mind to a world that is conditional, what arises is a sankata. And that sankata is the dukkha. I'll give you an example. You could take this to be expectation. I think one of the very first sermons was expectation is the seed to unhappiness or something like that. Expectation leads to, it's the biggest culprit, I think the name of the sermon was. And that was true. Let's take the example of that car, walking into the showroom. Now, you've seen the car that you want. The moment that you've seen the car that you want, you have now attached yourself to the car. Not physically, but mentally you have now attached to the car. Now, the sankata that is born, which this is only a dhamma. It's not a sight, it's not a sound, it's not a smell, it's not a taste, it's not a touch. This is a dhamma that only the mind can experience. So this is very subtle. It's extremely subtle. You might have to listen to this and think over it many times over before you can begin to get the crux of this. So this is very subtle. So pay as much attention as you possibly can and listen to this many times over until this clicks. The moment that attachment binds the mind to something that is conditioned. So the car clearly is a conditioned object, right? It's a conditioned object. The moment that attachment binds the mind to the conditioned object, the dhamma that is born at that point, that is being attached to a conditioned object. That is the dhamma that's born to that point in time. A dhamma that can only be experienced through the mind. Manancha paticca dhammecha. Only the mind can experience the dhamma, those dhammas, right? So we're not talking about sights, we're not talking about the physical car, and you get that hopefully, right? We're talking about attachment of the mind to the object. Now the dhamma that comes out as a result of that is a sankata. Why? How do we know it's a sankata? What is the nature of all sankatas? I mean, the names on the tin. It's conditioned. That's why it's called a sankata. Sankruta. By bringing causes together, you give rise to the effect, to the result. That is a sankata, right? So what are the causes that created that sankata? An anicca world and attachment. Attachment combined with an anicca world. Attachment binds the mind to an anicca world. The dhamma that is born at that time is a sankata. Because only a sankata can be subject to nirodha, or passing away. Passing away doesn't cut it. You find the causes that give rise to the fire, take away one of the causes, and the fire no longer exists. But that's because you have inspected the causes that give rise to it and then taken away. You just need to take away one cause. So this dhamma that has now been born, which is the sankata, which is the product of an anicca world or a conditioned world, and the binding of the mind through attachment to that conditioned world, you have given rise to the Dhamma, which is a Sankata. That Sankata is the dukkha. Now, as soon as that dukkha is born, because you have bound your consciousness with attachment to that conditioned object, you have now started the process of setting expectations. From that point forward, you now expect certain things of that Dhamma. You expect for that Dhamma to be in your possession. You expect for you to be able to achieve it. You expect for its safety. You expect for people to let you have it. These are all expectations. Now, to fulfill these expectations, you start to do what? Abhisankara. So you start to do Abhisankara. Those expectations that you have, will it be mine? Will someone take it away? All of that is dukkha dukkha. Yes. But it is the dukkha dukkha. Why? Because you gave rise to the dukkha in the first place. Now you see, this is why the first noble truth is not dukkha dukkha. The first noble truth is actually that dukkha. Because the moment that dukkha arises, which is a sankata, and the sankata which is the product of a conditioned world and attachment, what is the second noble truth? What is the cause for suffering? A conditioned world? Is the cause for suffering a conditioned world? No. What is it then? Attachment. So if you want to bring dukkha to an end, if it's anicca, a mother and father, they're not expecting, but the mother becomes pregnant. So no expectation, they weren't expecting a child, but the mother becomes pregnant. From the point that they come to know that the mother is now pregnant, expectations start to arise in the minds of these two parents. Were there expectations before the mother got to know she was pregnant? No. Now, will my child be pretty? Will my child be rich? Ke sara sara. What will she be? Right? All these questions start to arise. All these are dukkha dukkha. Because now these are expectations which have to be fulfilled. They're not, these are uneasy feelings. Expectations, they have to be fulfilled. None of us like to be in expectation. We want those expectations to be fulfilled. So when these expectations are fulfilled, at that point, we experience this ashwada mohata, pleasure. Now, does an Arahatun Vahanse ever experience that moment of pleasure? Does an Arahant ever experience that moment of pleasure? Yes or no? Think and answer. Think. Don't be hasty. Think now. Does an Arahant experience that moment of mental pleasure? Absolutely. No. Because pleasure cannot be there where there is no vexation. Where there is no vexation, there is no pleasure. At what point is an Arahant in a state of mental vexation? Never. Why? What have they put a stop to? A conditioned world? No. Then attachment. Because you have to have both parts of that equation. Conditioned world, product, attachment equals dukkha. The cause for suffering is not conditioned world, the cause for suffering is attachment. Cease the cause for suffering, which is attachment, now you just have a conditioned world, but no dukkha. So that's akin to, and as I said, that giving that example, a mother becomes pregnant. Until the point that they got to know that the mother was pregnant, there were no expectations for this child. This child didn't need a name. This child didn't need a school. This child didn't need an inheritance. This child didn't need a savings plan. Nothing like that. All these expectations started to arrive the point that the mother got to know that she was pregnant. So the fetus, the birth of that fetus, in this example that I'm using here, the birth of that fetus, or at least the mother coming to know of that, at that point forward, dukkha has arisen. Dukkha has arisen. Now that dukkha has arisen, dukkha follows. Sankhara dukkha follows. Viparinama dukkha follows. So let's say this mother wants to now send this child to a good school. Okay, so the child's born. After a few years of growing up, now it's time to put this child to a good school. So, this is all dukkha, right? Will I be able to send my child to a good school? The dukkha has already arisen because attachment's there. See, what happens if attachment ceases all of a sudden? The mother all of a sudden gets to know, let's say a woman goes into a hospital. She's got a big belly. She thinks she's pregnant. She goes to the hospital and then she becomes unconscious. Once she's regained her consciousness, she comes out of the hospital and then a nurse comes and says, "Oh, are you the lady that came in with a big belly?" "Yes." "Oh, this is your child." And she walks home with this child. This is a fabricated example. I don't know where it came from. It's just to help you get the idea, okay? So she's taken this, she's now picked up this baby. Oh, I didn't know I had a baby. All right, okay. So she's picked up this baby and now she's going home thinking that this is her baby. Later on, the scan results come from the hospital, and actually, what she had within her was some kind of a tumor. There was no baby, it was a tumor. This baby belongs to somebody else. She's walked home with somebody else's baby. Now, what point did dukkha arise? The moment that she was informed that this, madam, is your baby. Why? A conditioned world. Along came who? Attachment. Attachment combined with a conditioned world. What was born there? Dukkha. Now at that point, when she regained consciousness, she had no expectation of feeding a child, giving the child a name, nothing like that. But the point that she got to know, what? I have a child? Oh, okay. Now all of a sudden, all these expectations start to rise. Is she healthy? Where's her father? All these questions start to arise. Now, as I was saying, let's say it's time to put this child to a good school, right? So you go through the process of trying to find a good school. You go meet the ministers, and that's how you find a good school these days, right? You get these letters of recommendation, and then you go through the process, and then you find yourself the child a good school. Now, at that point where a good school has been found for this child, at that point the mother is going to feel a moment of pleasure. At this point where this mother experiences that moment of pleasure, I asked you the question, does an arahant ever experience this moment of pleasure? And the answer was no. Why? Because there's no attachment, as well as no ignorance. But we are speaking of someone who is bereft of ignorance. This is someone who has ignorance. So for someone who is ignorant, at least even an anagami, there's still ignorance in that mind. When this ashwada muhurta, or this moment of pleasure arises, on a base of ignorance, this person immediately begins to think that this world is nitya. For that point in time, this person begins to believe, yes, this world is to my liking. This world is to my liking. So the moment that they feel that the world is to my liking, is there dukkha anymore? Why? There's no need to set expectations. Whatever you want, it's there. Why? It's to my liking. Now there's no fear behind expectations. There's no fear of will I be able to. The will I be able to, all that goes away. The what ifs, all that goes away. There's no fear anymore. Why? Because at that point in time, this is a person that has ignorance. Remember, this is why an Arahatan Mahanse will never experience this point of pleasure. I mean, the pleasure that they're in is completely outside of this, outside the realm of what we are speaking of. That happiness is a happiness where there is zero attachment.
cannot be compared to this happiness that we are speaking of here. But we are talking about what is real for us, right? So that moment of pleasure can only be experienced by someone who has ignorance. And that moment of pleasure where ignorance takes over, ignorance tells us, the world is to your liking. Therefore, after the viparinama happens, what was the view before? It's to my liking. So what should you do now? Make effort again. Because there's a point where I can bring myself that happiness, that pleasure once again. And for that, he begins to exert the body, mind and speech. And all again, sankhara starts. The process of sankhara begins, abhisankhara. And then that point of pleasure arises again. Again, see, I told you it's there. And then it passes away. But because that point at which they experience that pleasure, they begin to think, what I wanted, I have now achieved. It's like, you like to, say, eat an ice cream. You like, say you like strawberry ice cream. And you like to eat strawberry ice cream, so you like the taste of strawberry. You take the ice cream to your mouth, and the moment your tongue touches that ice cream, you think, yes, see, it's there. Happiness is there in the ice cream. Do you still not feel that? If you're telling me that you don't, then this seat is all yours. Be my guest. Because I've still got a long way to go. I'm far behind you. Because this is the sanya vipalyasa. This is the chitta vipalyasa. And also possibly the drishti vipalyasa. See, even for someone who understands the Dhamma, even where the drishti vipalyasa has gone away, has disappeared, right? Even where the distorted view has been removed, there's still the sanya vipalyasa. The consciousness at the root still says, it's to your liking. On reflection, no, it wasn't to my liking, it was just causes giving rise to the result. But at the point you're experiencing, which, how long does it take you to reflect? How many chittas? Many trillions. We are talking about this point of pleasure in each individual chitta. So in each individual chitta, you're experiencing this point of pleasure. At that point, you are based in ignorance, and therefore that ignorance dictates and says, the world is to your liking. So there's no problem. Just continue doing what you're doing, and you'll be just fine. And this is how we wasted our lives. This is our story. We should be doing a documentary on this. Says, I think BBC ought to do a documentary on this. The waste of human life. Shouldn't they? The waste of human life. Because the point you experience that pleasure, you think, see, I told you, it's there. It's there. Happiness is in the ice cream. Happiness is in the sights, in the sounds, in the smell, in the taste, in the touch. Therefore, go back online and order. But when the box arrives, it's empty. Beg your pardon, madam? So the level of ignorance reduces with your attainment of margapala. But once you're in a certain state, let's say a pruthagana, a mundane person, the only ignorance, the only knowledge that, or the only wisdom that they can come to is mundane wisdom. Laukika sammaditya, right? They can't come to lokottara sammaditya, which is supramundane right view, until they come across at least someone who's a sotapanna. Okay? So, if we are speaking of the dukkha and anicca dukkha anatta, then of course we are talking about the supramundane stuff. We are talking in that realm. This is nothing laukika. This is all lokottara stuff, right? That's why we need a Buddha to have shown us this. So in those terms, one is entirely ignorant of that. So when someone is a mundane person, they have no idea, no understanding, no knowledge about what's going on. So that ignorance about that fact is constant. However, through association with noble people, they come across the teaching of the Buddha, and then one fine day they become a Sotapanna. Now, they have right view of this. Through right view, like I said, on reflection, you can contemplate on previous experiences and think, although, you see, that's what we did the first part of our discussion. I asked you the question, you walked into the shop, you were walking on the road, you went online and ordered, right? All these are experiences that I'm asking you to reflect on in the past. But at this point in time, aren't you experiencing pleasure? When you see these flowers, do you not say, hey, beautiful flowers? Where's beauty in the flower? But at this moment in time, as you look at this flower, don't you experience that point of pleasure? A young guy, when he sees a girl, does he not immediately feel, hey, that's a pretty girl? She's a pretty girl. Or when a girl sees a guy, he's a handsome guy. At that point, it's just there. As if it's automatic. Because at the perception level, it's still distorted. On reflection, you can think back, no, beauty does not exist in the flower. But by that point, you've already seen the beauty in the flower. You've already seen the beauty in the flower. But you can reflect on it and then come to an understanding, no, beauty does not exist in the flower. And then following that, you continue to deepen your understanding of the Dhamma, and then you come to a state where you become a Sakurdagami and an Anagami. Now, good question, madam. An Anagami who is born in the Rupavachara Brahmalokas, in the form sphere, they don't have a tongue or a nose or a physical body. So they don't have a solid body like you and I do. These are Brahmas in the Rupavachara Brahma worlds. Now, thinking back about the example I gave you at the beginning, if red is the same as pink and pink is the same as blue and blue is the same as purple, the happiness does not exist in the color. If we are seeking happiness, is there a point in looking at the colors? If happiness is what we seek, and happiness does not exist in the Rupa, is there a point in looking at Rupa? Okay, put Rupa to a side. Let's take the sense of smell. If happiness does not exist in smell, and all smells are the same, I'm not talking about smells that are quite strong, which cause a physical uneasiness, right? There are such smells like, methane, for example, right? Or sulfur dioxide, and, strong gases like that. But they have a physical element to it. It starts to scorch the cells of the nose and so on and so forth. But I'm just talking about pleasant smells and unpleasant smells, not strong smells, pleasant smells and unpleasant smells. Okay? So if pleasantness does not exist in the smell, then do we any longer use our noses to go smell things? No, because all smells are the same. If all smells are the same, then do you need a nose to go smelling? No, because then smelling is the same as not smelling. Because there are no smells there to go looking for happiness. This is why someone who comes to that understanding, who is an Anagami, who then is gone and born in the Brahma worlds, does not have a what? A nose. Because he no longer is in a state of vexation, looking for pleasure in smells, because he has come to an understanding that pleasure cannot be found in smells. He or she has come to the understanding that pleasure cannot be found in taste. He or she has come to the understanding that pleasure cannot be found in tactile sensations. That much he is knowledgeable. By that much he's come to his senses. But eyes and ears, he or she still believes that happiness can still be found in sights and in sounds. Therefore, if happiness can be found in sights and sounds exist in the outside world, therefore I have to bring them into my world, and for that I need eyes and I need ears. Therefore, these Brahmas are born with eyes and ears, but no nose, no tongue, and no physical body. Again I repeat, these sense organs are nothing other than equipment for us to relieve ourselves from vexation, nothing else. These are just tools to get a job done. And the job is for the mind to find pleasure. But the mind is ignorant. For as long as ignorance prevails, mind thinks that pleasure is in the outside world. Therefore, you need a sense organ that brings in these sense impressions from the outside world. Does that make sense? Excellent question. What is, sir? Dukkha or dukkha dukkha? Uh-huh. So the one who's ignorant believes that pleasure exists in the outside object, right? To bring that outside object into now. You see, once you understand the Dhamma, this is why you speak like this. You speak like this because now you understand what's really going on. You understand that it's not the outside object that brought me pleasure. All the eye did was bring in color. And through the optic nerve, that sent a signal to my brain, and the brain left a mental impression on the mind. All that you know, sir. But someone who does not have an understanding of the Paticcasamuppada Dhamma, no understanding of the Dhamma, believes that, hey, I open my eye, I see flower make me happy. So happiness is in the flower. Why? They have no understanding that this is an attachment that I have, the attachment with which I created this sankata in the inside world. They don't know any of this stuff. They have no understanding of inside worlds and outside worlds. All they know is open eye, see flower, flower has happiness, flower bring me happiness, I am happy. This is all they know. This is ignorance. So the sense impression, absolutely, because all the sense organ does is bring in the sight, bring in the color, that then the brain leaves an impression of that sense on the mind. That we know. So when we begin to understand this, we realize, no, it's not the outside flower that did this. I had this model, remember we spoke of models in the past? I have a model into which I try and fit the sight that came into my mind through my eye, and if it fits, tick. That made me so happy. Where it doesn't fit, then I'm unhappy. But we know that because now we have an understanding of the Dhamma. But someone who doesn't understand, because that's what the understanding of Dhamma is, the Paticcasamuppada process. Yo Dhammam passati, so mam passati. Or rather, your Paticcasamuppada passati, so Dhammam passati. To see the Dhamma, you have to see the Paticcasamuppada process. And it's the Paticcasamuppada process that speaks of the inside world and the outside world. It's the Paticcasamuppada process that talks about tanha, upadana, creating this ayatana. All of this has to do with the inside world. The problem's not in the outside world, is it? So what does Paticcasamuppada process talk of? Giving rise to dukkha. Dukkha exists where? In the inside world. So the entirety of the Paticcasamuppada process, the dependent origination process, speaks of creating that inside world. But one who is ignorant of that does not know this. All he knows is open eye, see flower, flower has happiness, flower makes me happy. So I have to bring the flower into my world. This is not that mental word. Take it home with me. That's what they know. Little do they know that all that's happening really is that they have a distorted view, a distorted perception, a distorted sentiment that it's the flower that brings me happiness. Through association with immoral, ignoble people, their minds have been distorted, their view has been distorted, and they have come to think that pleasure can be sought from the outside world, and now they're just dancing to the beat. A beat that someone else played. Now I'm just dancing because someone said do it, so I'm doing it. The problem is when you open your eyes and you see the flower, yes, it makes you pleasure. It brings pleasure. There's no question about that. But the source of the pleasure is not the flower. That's the problem. The source of the pleasure is the attachment that caused the vexation, and the vexation reducing by that much. That is what brought us the pleasure. For as long as we are ignorant of that, we continue to use our sense organs to walk into saloons and order loaves of bread. How many more times do you want to do that? So, I know that was a little bit heavy. I understand that. It's very subtle. What is the dukkha, what is the dukkha? That's very subtle. So I suggest you go back and listen to this sermon again. And if you have questions, you can either meet me after the sermon or perhaps next week. I know you need to leave soon after finish. So perhaps next week, if you want to turn up a little bit early, you can come and ask a question if you didn't get it. But before you do that, I suggest please listen to it. At least the last part of that sermon where we started to speak of this. Once, listen to it again, listen to it 3 times, 4 times. If you want, you can even get the video, because I know I use a lot of hand gestures, which I use to express myself, which are not all that helpful for our online listeners. But you see how fortunate you are? I used to do this sermon looking at a laptop. You know how difficult I found that? Because I'm quite an expressive person. I use body language quite a bit to express my ideas. So when I'm someone who's like that, I like to be expressive, then sitting in front of a laptop trying to convey these points, which are very subtle, difficult to understand, was practically impossible. Well, something must have worked, that's why you're here today. So, again, I remind you, go back and listen to this sermon again, and if you have questions, then we can discuss later on. Okay, so before we conclude, then I have this video to show you by popular demand. Now, just a word of caution. This is a disclaimer. Viewers' discretion is advised. It does have some graphic images. So if you are sensitive, then I would suggest look still. Because it's one thing to say, hey, I don't want to like to look at that stuff, but this is what's going to happen to you. You're going to have to look at that when it happens anyway. So you might as well now and prepare yourself for it. But if you're really going to struggle with that, then perhaps, just turn your head away. If you find that really disturbing. It has some images of animals attacking each other and so on and so forth. I'm not going to ruin it for you. But watch the video, and then we'll have a brief chat at the end of that before we conclude the sermon. So if you could just get the lights turned off so you can get a good view. Could you switch that off as well, please? Is the audio okay? Sorry? It has some text in Sinhala. I hope you can all read Sinhala. It has some text throughout the video. So if you read it, it's going to be helpful to understand the message that's being conveyed. For our online listeners, we'll get this online and send you a link, because I know what they're thinking right now. You don't have to be vexed. We'll send you a link. If you want, you're welcome to switch to the other side of the room in case I'm blocking your view. So just if you want to.
වගේ හිතට දැනෙනවා බුදුහාමුදුරුවනේ අපි අසරණ වෙලා වගේ හිතට දැනෙනවා බුදුහාමුදුරුවනේ ඔරුවක් ඇති මිනිසුන් වෙති බෙරලක් නැති මේ සසර දනව්වේ අපි අසරණ වෙලා වගේ හිතට දැනෙනවා බුදුහාමුදුරුවනේ බුදුහාමුදුරුවනේ ඇති ගෙදරක් නැති ගමනක් වෙති බෙරසක් නැති මේ සසර දනව්වේ අපි අසරණ වෙලා වගේ හිතට දැනෙනවා බුදුහාමුදුරුවනේ බුදුහාමුදුරුවනේ
That is the documentary I spoke of. Our documentary. The documentary of humans, us, our fate. If we don't realize what's in store for us. You know, in the video, the clip that you saw there, at the start of the film, you saw there was a man, a bloke who was quite young. You know, he thought the world revolved around him. He was the centerpiece. You know, he was handy, dandy. And so, in his ignorance, he thought that pleasure existed in the outside world. So what did he do? At any cost, you shall be mine. And in that belief, he went ahead and committed a number of unwholesome, unmeritorious deeds to bring the happiness that was in the outside world into his possession. See, for as long as we believe that the happiness is in the outside world, isn't that what that guy thought? He looked at a girl and thought, now I found happiness. There's pleasure. I have to bring that pleasure into my world. If there's pleasure, it shouldn't be there, it should be with me. It should be with me, so I have to go and fetch it. And if there's anyone who gets in my way, they will be killed. They will be slaughtered. I don't care who. I don't care what cost. happiness will be mine. What about the consequences? What about the consequences? When it's time to pay back, how long? How many eons? How many years? How many millions, if not trillions of years will you have to pay back for the deeds that we've done? Just think about your own lives in this birth. Forget previous lives. Let's say you've been saints all in your previous lives. What about this life? Have you not done unmeritorious deeds? Taken the life of another? Let's not say human beings. What about animals? Stolen, lied, backstabbed, engaged in sensual misconduct. Now what happens when it's time to pay back? You're going to have to then pay with your own blood, with your own flesh, with your skin and your bones. Then it's going to be painful. What was the song at the end? Api asarana vela wagi hitata danenawa buduhamuduruvane. Lord Buddha, we feel like we are destitute. We are lost in this samsara. Aren't we really lost if we are not to understand that happiness does not exist in the outside world? Aren't we lost if we don't realize that? If we don't realize that happiness does not exist in the sights, the sounds, the smells, the tastes and the touch that exists in the outside world, what are we going to be doing? To bring happiness into my world, I am willing to do anything. And to do that, then I am prepared to kill. I am prepared to steal. I am prepared to engage in sexual or sensual misconduct. I am prepared to lie, slander, abuse, violence, all that. But when it's time to pay back, then no one's there for my refuge. No one's there to help me. Then I have to pay back all by myself. We are the owners of our own karma. We are its kinsmen. The karma is my kinsman. The karma is what brought me here. The karma is what's going to take me from here. Whether good or bad, it's going to determine my next moment. If we are so helpless in front of karma, then it's about time we put a stop to it. And as we discussed at the beginning of this sermon, why do we do karma again? For two reasons. One, to bring pleasure into our world, or to avoid the things that take pleasure from me, believing that pleasure exists where? In the outside world. Who was the only teacher that taught us that pleasure does not exist in the outside world? Pleasure is something that you experience when you attach yourself to something, and then you now start vexation. When that suffering begins to relieve for a moment's time, then you begin to experience pleasure. Who was the teacher who taught us that? The Lord Buddha. Isn't that why we say, Natti me saranang anyang buddho me saranang varam? No one else is there for my refuge. No one else is there to save me from this. Because he was the only teacher that taught you that taught us that. If you can find in the Holy Bible, bring and show me where it says attachment is the cause for suffering. If you can find in the Holy Quran, bring and show me where it says attachment is the cause for all suffering. If you can find in the three Vedas, bring and show me where it says attachment is the cause for suffering. If that is the case, then the Buddha would have written all three books. But he didn't. Therefore, you're not going to find attachment is the root for suffering in any of those books. You're only going to find it in the Tripitaka, which contains the teaching of the Supreme Buddha and his disciples. So I think it's about time we come to our senses. I think it's about time we begin to realize that this happiness that we seek is meaningless. The lives that we have spent, countless years, countless days, months and moments that keep passing us by, trying to find the happiness that does not exist in the outside world. I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, is it not time to put a stop to it? How much longer would you want to go looking for this? Look what's going to happen. If you're not prepared for that, then it's about time to stop. Stop now. You can't change the past. Stop now. The karmas you have done will bear fruit only if you are born in the relevant place. You are now in the human world. You are not going to go to the apayas because of a vipaka. You are going to go to the apaya because of a karma. Stop doing the karma, you will not be born in an apaya ever again. Stop doing a karma, you will not be born in the deva worlds ever again. Stop doing karmas, you will not be born in the Brahma worlds ever again. Stop doing karmas, you will not be born in any of the 31 realms of existence ever again. The vipakas can only bear fruit where there is the ground for that. And to do that, to stop doing karmas, the only understanding we need then is that happiness, pleasure does not exist in the outside world. It is only a product of our own attachment through which we experience vexation. The relief of vexation brings us happiness. What is the point of that happiness? What is the point of that happiness? You decide and take action. Now it's up to you. I know what I ought to do. You can decide for yourselves. Okay, so I think we should probably bring the sermon to an end by now. Again, for our online listeners, we'll make that video available because they were probably a bit lost with what I just explained there. For their benefit, we'll make sure we do that. Okay, so before we conclude the sermon, let us do the Arya Maitri. I think it's the English one today. Sinhala? Okay.
Mamada siyalu loka siyalu satvayo sansara dahayen midetva sansara rogayen midetva sansara bhayen midetva sansara ginnen midetva sansara anduren midetva Nibbana parama sukhayen sukhita taravetva Nibbana parama sukhayen sukhita taravetva Nibbana parama sukhayen sukhita taravetva Mamada siyalu loka siyalu satvayo Raga bandhanayen midetva Dvesha bandhanayen midetva Moha bandhanayen midetva Mara bandhanayen midetva Nibbana parama sukhayen sukhita taravetva Nibbana parama sukhayen sukhita taravetva Nibbana parama sukhayen sukhita taravetva Mamada siyalu loka siyalu satvayo Jati ginnen midetva Jara ginnen midetva Vyadhi ginnen midetva Marana ginnen midetva Nibbana parama sukhayen sukhita taravetva Nibbana parama sukhayen sukhita taravetva Nibbana parama sukhayen sukhita taravetva Mamada siyalu loka siyalu satvayo Shoka ginnen midetva Paridevayen midetva
දුක්ඛ ගින්නෙන් මිදෙත්වා දෝමනස්සයෙන් මිදෙත්වා උපායාසයෙන් මිදෙත්වා යම් පිච්ඡං නලබති තම්පි දුක්ඛයෙන් මිදෙත්වා සංකිත්තේන පංචෝපාදානස්කන්ධයෙන් මිදෙත්වා නිබ්බාන පරම සුඛයෙන් සුඛිතතර වෙත්වා නිබ්බාන පරම සුඛයෙන් සුඛිතතර වෙත්වා නිබ්බාන පරම සුඛයෙන් සුඛිතතර වෙත්වා කාම ලෝක අනාතයි එයින් මිදෙත්වා රූප ලෝක අනාතයි එයින් මිදෙත්වා අරූප ලෝක අනාතයි එයින් මිදෙත්වා සියලු ලෝක අනාතයි එයින් මිදෙත්වා අතහැරීම නාතයි අතහැරීම වෙත්වා නොඇල්ම නාතයි නොඇල්ම වෙත්වා මිදීම නාතයි මිදීම වෙත්වා නිවනම නාතයි නිවනම 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 වෙත්වා නත්ති මේ සරණං අඤ්ඤං බුද්ධෝ මේ සරණං වරං නත්ති මේ සරණං අඤ්ඤං ධම්මෝ මේ සරණං වරං නත්ති මේ සරණං අඤ්ඤං සංඝෝ මේ සරණං වරං නත්ති මේ සරණං අඤ්ඤං නිබ්බානං පරමං සුඛං. Okay. So before we conclude, let us take a moment to transfer the merits that we have all acquired today to all those who deserve those merits. Just one reminder before that. I think before I came down, you might have seen another short video clip of, was that shown? Yes, at the start? Of a chivara that is being prepared, a robe that's being prepared at a local residence. If you're looking for an opportunity to get involved, I think there were details that were made, that were available on the display. Were there? Do you have that to hand, Dasani? Okay, we'll make that available. If anyone wants to get involved in that, because there's an upcoming event at which I think the robe will be offered to the Mahasangha. So if you're wanting to get involved in that, then the lady who's in charge of preparing the robe has very kindly opened up her home for you to visit her and involve in weaving the robe. Even if it's just one strike of the weaving machine, that's a lot of merit that you can acquire by doing that. For some of you, that might be once in a lifetime opportunity, because it's not very seldom that a lot of people allow others to come, particularly strangers, to allow into their homes and then to take part in something like this. But then, in the Dhamma, none of us are strangers. The Dhamma is what binds us together. So she has opened her home up for you. I think it's from the 29th of October, right? From the 29th of October, you have the opportunity to do that. We can make the telephone number available. Do you have it, madam? Okay. So for anyone who's interested, please speak to Mrs. Umanda and she'll make that available to you. And you can go and take part in that. Even if it's just a couple of minutes. The merit that you will acquire through that is immense. So make use of it if you so wish. Okay. So with that, let's conclude the sermon. Let us take a moment to transfer the merits that we have all acquired today to all those who deserve the merits of this meritorious deed. First and foremost, let us once again remind ourselves that it is because of the supremely enlightened one, the perfect one, the peerless one, the unparalleled one, the unvanquished one, the supreme Gautama Samma Sambuddhan Mahanse, that we have the gift of Dhamma today. It is because he sacrificed himself over many yawns in samsara for nothing other than the redemption of all other sentient beings, when he clearly had the opportunity to do that many, many births before his last. To do that for himself, his sacrifice is why we have the Dhamma today, for our redemption, for our salvation from the shackles of samsara. It is also because of his disciples, the Bhikkhu Bhikkhunis, Upasak Upasikas, who sacrificed their lives, who dedicated their lives to protecting and preserving this Dhamma, that we have the gift of Dhamma today in the form of the Tripitaka, to study, to analyze, to understand, to comprehend and redeem ourselves from samsara. So may the merits that we have all acquired today be transferred to them. If any of them have today been born in the woeful plane, may these merits help them to be born in the blissful plane. May these merits help them to abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the Noble Eightfold Path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Also, let us take a moment to transfer these merits to all the members of the Mahasangha, the Mahanayakas, the Anunayakas who reside all over the world, as well as the Bhikkhu Bhikkhunis, Upasak Upasikas who are resident all around the world, who have dedicated their lives to practicing the Dhamma, to studying, contemplating, understanding, comprehending the Dhamma. And alongside that, they also dedicate time in their lives to spread this Dhamma, to disseminate this teaching, the Lord Buddha's teaching of redemption, to all sentient beings. This is why both you and I today have received this gift of Dhamma. It is thanks to them that we have had this gift today. So people just like yourselves who have dedicated their lives to not just redeeming themselves, but also others, let us take a moment to transfer these merits to them. Wherever they may be, may they be able to rejoice in these merits. Also, let us take a moment to transfer these merits to the chief incumbent monk as well as the other resident monks in your local temples and nunneries. Although you are here today, ladies and gentlemen, to listen to this sermon, to observe Sil or whatever the case might be, so on and so forth, it is the monks and nuns in your local temples, local nunneries who have always been by your side through thick and thin, through rain and shine. They have always been by your side, helped you in your lay and in your mundane, supramundane lives as well. So let us take a moment to transfer those merits to them as well. May they all be able to rejoice in these merits. May these merits help them, empower them, energize them to fulfill the Noble Eightfold Path, abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the Noble Eightfold Path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana in this very birth itself. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Also, let us take a moment to transfer merits to the Devas, Brahmas, spirits, demons, and the dead that we invited at the start of the sermon, as well as anyone who might have been a mother, father, uncle, aunt, brother, sister, grandparents, so on and so forth, our ancestors in the past who have been related to us, who might have helped us, assisted us, supported us in any way, shape or form, whether that be by offering us a glass of water or perhaps by showing us the way when we were lost in samsara. For any of them who today are seeking merits because they have been, as they have now been born in the woeful plane, may these merits help them to be born in the blissful plane. For anyone born in the blissful plane, may these merits help them to abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the Noble Eightfold Path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Also, let us take a moment to transfer these merits to the members of the forces who dedicated their lives, who sacrificed their lives to preserve and protect our country, our motherland. It is thanks to them that today we live in peace and harmony with everyone and alongside each other, as well as members of the police force who dedicated and sacrificed their lives during the time of a civil war that lasted many decades in our country. Let us take a moment to transfer the merits to them as well as those who lost their lives, be they friend or foe, civilians who were caught up in the war, let us take a moment to transfer these merits to them as well. As well as that, let us take a moment to transfer merits to those who might have lost their lives in natural disasters such as the tsunamis, not just in Sri Lanka but also in other countries, in the world, other parts of the world. If any of them today are born in the woeful plane and seeking merits, may these merits help them to be born in the blissful plane. Through the power of these merits, may they be able to abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Also, let us take a moment to transfer these merits to everyone who made this event possible. Those who made this venue possible to you, to the chief incumbent monk of this monastery, as well as those monks who are resident here, but attend to the everyday needs of those of you who visit us, as well as the resident monks of this temple. For anyone and everyone who made this event possible by offering you a glass of water, or perhaps by ushering you to a seat, or perhaps by offering you a meal to sate your hunger. In any way, shape or form, if they might have helped or supported you or assisted you, may all of them be able to rejoice in these merits. As well as let's take a moment to transfer merits to those members of your family who are alive today, who you may have today left at home so that you can be here today, as well as those who are employed with you, your employers or employees, who today look after your businesses, your ventures, your enterprises. It is thanks to them that today you have the freedom, you have the peace of mind to be here today, to listen to this sermon, to listen to the Dhamma, to understand the Dhamma, and to redeem yourselves from the shackles of samsara. As well as that, let us take a moment to transfer merits to those who perhaps might have provided you transport to be here today, or perhaps might have washed the clothes that you are wearing right now, maybe washed them, ironed them, and made them available to you. All of these people who, in whatever shape, way or form, might have helped you to be here today, may they all be able to rejoice in these merits. If any of them who have helped you, supported you, not just in this birth but in previous births, parents, teachers, so on and so forth, may today be born in the woeful plane, may through the power of these merits they be able to born, may they be able to be born in the blissful plane. Through the power of these merits, may they be able to abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And finally, let us take a moment to once again recognize the fact that throughout this day, throughout this evening, we have been able to make offerings to the Supreme Buddha, we have been able to make offerings to the Supreme Dhamma, we have been able to make offerings to the Supreme Sangha, we have been able to listen to the Dhamma, to pass on the gift of Dhamma, which is itself in this very human birth itself. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. The members of the Mahasangha will now transfer their blessings to you. Raga ginneng midetva, dvesha ginneng midetva, moha ginneng midetva, Nibbana parama sukhayen sukhita taravetva. Nibbana parama sukhayen sukhita taravetva. Mamada siyalu loka siyalu satvayo. Nibbana parama sukhayen sukhita taravetva. Nibbana parama sukhayen sukhita taravetva. Nibbana parama sukhayen sukhita taravetva. Tunruange suvisi ananta mahaguna belen silu loka silu satyom Nibbana parama sukhayen sukhita taravetva. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May all beings be freed from the fire of desire. May all beings be freed from the fire of aversion. May all beings be freed from the fire of delusion. May all beings attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.